If you are here, you have taken an active role in bettering your life, no matter what stage of life you are in. The Banyan Treatment Center's podcast will discuss many topics like recovery, addiction, self-help, mental health, and so much more. It will provide you with tools to succeed, ideas for recovering, and how-tos on creating a better life. My name is Alyssa, and today's episode is about the benefits of telehealth. Today on our panel, we have Kahlia Bersson. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'm so happy to be here.
So, Kahlia, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who you are, what your background is in relation to telehealth?
Well, as you mentioned, my name is Kahlia Bersson. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been working for Banyan Treatment Center for about 5 years, overseeing our clinical programs in Boca Raton. And recently, I transitioned into overseeing our telehealth services nationally.
Awesome. And what type of licensure do you hold?
So I'm a licensed clinical social worker as well as an EMDR practitioner. And I also have a few other credentials.
Nice. What are the other credentials?
I'm a qualified supervisor in the state of Florida, a trauma professional. In addition to that, I've sought out some additional education. So I am an EMDR practitioner.
Nice.
I'm a certified trauma-informed care therapist, as well as a qualified supervisor, which means I'm able to supervise younger therapists after they graduate from their master's program and help mold and guide them to the point of their own licensure.
Nice. So I guess that was perfect segue for you to become the new director of the telehealth program here.
I think so. After spending quite a bit of time overseeing the daily operations and the clinical operations at our Boca Raton facility, it was a natural transition for me, especially during COVID, where telehealth was such a topic of conversation and really the prime intervention that people were looking for. I knew the Banyan system. I knew the quality of care that Banyan wanted to deliver because I was delivering it in person to Banyan's patients. And we were able to take that quality and transition it to our telehealth services.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as a professional in a non-clinical space, specifically my day-to-day, prior to COVID, hearing about telehealth kind of seemed like, it didn't seem real, And obviously the world has changed immensely since COVID, and things like telehealth really came to the forefront of things and are leading now, I feel like, in medical and clinical space for many reasons: efficiency, response time. But we're going to get into all of that, and I think it's going to be a really interesting topic to talk about. Telehealth is defined as the provision of healthcare remotely by means of telecommunications technology and became widely popular during the COVID pandemic. Here at Banyan, we utilize this service in several states and have seen a great benefit of it to our patients and our staff. There is a large volume of research reporting that clinical outcomes with telehealth are as good as or better than usual care, and that telehealth provides intermediate outcomes and satisfaction. So, Kahlia, can you just explain to us what telehealth is?
Absolutely. So telehealth is, as you mentioned, a way of delivering care to patients from their own homes or wherever they're living. The reason why telehealth took off so much during the pandemic due to quarantines and things like that, we were able to really do research that was unprecedented prior to COVID. Healthcare, and especially behavioral healthcare, probably wouldn't have transitioned to telehealth this quickly without the catalyst of the pandemic.
Now, is telehealth considered inpatient or outpatient care?
So for the most part, telehealth is considered outpatient. There are some telehealth resources that some inpatient facilities can use via technology, especially if a patient is inpatient and they actually are COVID positive and they're still able to access resources. However, Banyan is specializing in intensive outpatient and outpatient via our telehealth services.
Okay. So would you say kind of like an example of using telehealth inpatient for our patients specifically is like for our faith and recovery program for somebody that's inpatient currently?
Absolutely. So what we've been able to create at Banyan is a network of resources through technology. One of those resources is our Faith and Recovery program. So if we have a patient in Massachusetts that's still in the Banyan network, but our home base for our Faith and Recovery program is located in Florida, the patient in Massachusetts, even if they're inpatient, can still access our Faith and Recovery services that are primarily based at Florida.
Yeah, that's amazing. So patients are really able to benefit from services even if they're not in the same state, just because they're part of our network in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Telehealth, there's some preliminary research that's come out, and something that really surprised everybody, and I think is very interesting, is that at the beginning of the pandemic, all of these therapists, doctors, and experts were predicting that there was going to be an increase in the suicide rate in America. Historically, economic downturn and all of those things have indicated an increase in suicide rates. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was actually a decrease in suicide rates. And what's interesting about that is that a lot of people are pointing to the accessibility of behavioral health care services like what we do at Banyan, attributing that overall to a decrease in the suicide rate in this country.
That is so amazing.
It is.
You know, and it's part of the whole grand scheme of things that mental health is becoming, you know, so important to people for the first time, it feels like, in ages, you know, and it's not even like, I don't even want to call it mental health anymore. It should just be health, you know?
I agree.
And having these services so readily available, you can grab your phone and talk to a psychiatrist and talk to a therapist when you're having an issue without having the stigma of having to go into an office and, you know, go through all of these hoops. It's really helping people, and it's showing from the statistics that you're providing right now.
It is. It also provides a continuity of care for patients. So, for example, if we receive a patient at Banyan that's receiving services out of our Florida locations and they reside in Florida, we're able to still provide them services within the same treatment team. And there have been studies and things that do show that when there are gaps in services or transitions in services, going from one doctor to another doctor, that's when things can kind of go wrong in patient care. And what we're able to do is now we're able to retain people longer, as long as they need it, really, and provide them a continuity of care that historically was something very, very difficult to do.
So who would you say is best suited for this type of treatment program, the outpatient telehealth program?
I think that anybody can be very well suited for this program. There's obviously a piece of technology involved, so the ability to access and navigate technology, but on a very elementary level. We're talking Zoom. You know, we're not talking a complicated program all of our patients access their services via Zoom, and we did that intentionally, really, to create the ability for patients to utilize a platform that they pretty much know and are comfortable with.
Right. Yeah, after the pandemic, everyone's a professional at Zoom.
Yes.
So what populations are we currently servicing with the telehealth program? I know there's a couple of specialty ones.
Yeah, definitely. Banyan services any adults 18 and over that have a mental health diagnosis or a substance use disorder, or dual diagnosis, so meaning they can have a substance use disorder and a mental health disorder. We take specialty populations. We do provide services to active military veterans. We have a faith component that we can accommodate via our Faith and Recovery services, LGBTQ plus individuals as well, and trauma-informed care. So we also are able to provide services to people that have experienced trauma and newly diagnosed, maybe even from the pandemic, the trauma of navigating the new world, basically. We're able to provide services.
So what would you say would be the process of somebody entering the telehealth program?
It's relatively easy. We do screen our patients because we want to make sure that we can deliver the right service to the patient. So the way that is done is that you can call Banyan. We have an admissions department that does a brief assessment with everybody. And if you're appropriate for telehealth, within a day or two, you set up your appointment for intake. And then a day or two after that, you have a therapist.
Generally speaking, what would you say would be like inappropriate for this level of care?
Probably somebody who needs a higher level of care. So
Yeah.
that might be a detox patient, somebody who would be in medical distress
Right.
if they're not treated in a medical environment. But there's very minimal criteria that would exclude somebody from engaging in telehealth.
Yeah, and even if they did need that higher level of care, we could service them in a different way and then potentially transition them into our telehealth program at a later time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If a patient is doing this screening and the person that they're speaking to believes that they need a higher level of care, which could be detox or residential programming, at that point, they would suggest that and help navigate, the client and what they need to do in order to get to that higher level of care.
What kind of disorders are we treating in the telehealth program?
So in our telehealth program, we primarily treat substance use disorders and mental health disorders.
Okay.
There's a wide array of disorders that would fall under those umbrella. But if you're somebody who is struggling and you're thinking maybe I'm using too much, or maybe my mental health is in a place where, I'm not comfortable anymore, just call Banyan and we can do that assessment and we can find out if we have a program that meets your needs.
So I know you kind of talked about the technology and Zoom in general, but what else does somebody need in order to actually be involved in the telehealth program?
Outside of the technology, ideally they would have a willingness and a motivation for change. If not, we still do treat patients that, are a little on the fence about, moving forward with treatment, or maybe even moving forward with implementing things in their life for their health and wellness. But beyond that, there really isn't much that somebody would need in order to engage in telehealth. Technology and being able to thrive in a world of technology, I think, is really important for the consumer of telehealth. But at Banyan, we're focusing primarily on behavioral health. So like I said, substance use disorder, mental health diagnoses. But I do think that telehealth is viable for every single person, even if it's not what you choose for behavioral health, for your primary care physician, for, other health resources. I think that it's accessible and something really great for all consumers.
Nice. So willingness and a computer.
Basically.
That's what you need.
Basically.
And to give us a call to get started. So can you walk us through what a day looks like for someone that's admitted into the telehealth program?
Sure. In our intensive outpatient program for telehealth at Banyan, we provide 9 hours a week of group therapy. So 3 days a week, what you're doing during your specified time slot is that you're logging in via Zoom. You're with the same cohort of individuals, the same therapists 3 times a week. That group lasts about 3 hours, 3 times a week. That's where we get the 9 hours. And during that group, you're able to process your thoughts and feelings. If you're in substance use disorder treatment, you can talk about triggers, you can talk about lapses, you can talk about navigating 12-step, you can talk about family stuff, anything along those lines. And if you're in the mental health program, we do really focus on wellness, coping skills, grounding techniques, medication compliance, navigating the world in a way that, supports wellness.
Now, that's interesting you brought up the medication. So in the mental health program, how are we navigating medications when we're offering virtual treatment?
Our patients have a couple of options when it comes to medications. Banyan provides medication management services, so we do have a team that can meet with patients, talk about their psychiatric care, and prescribe medications. Or we can also, if you have a psychiatrist or somebody that you're seeing already and you don't want to leave that practitioner, we can work with them. Okay. So we can do in-house medication management for the majority of our clients.
Okay. So you'd be communicating with the psychiatrist.
Ideally.
And making sure that, everybody's on the same program and working together and providing information to one another.
We definitely try to coordinate with outside practitioners. That's for the benefit of our patients. The health model really is leaning towards a holistic healthcare model. And I think, as consumers ourselves, you and I, we've navigated this healthcare system where things are piecemealed, where, the pharmacist doesn't know this and the doctor doesn't know that, or the front desk person doesn't know this. And so one thing that Banyan really tries to do to separate itself from other programs is, yes, yes, provide holistic care for our patients, but also if a patient has a practitioner that they're comfortable with, we're not going to force anyone to leave their practitioners, but we would encourage the ability to communicate with them to replicate that holistic healthcare model.
Right. So what do you think makes Banyan's telehealth program unique compared to other ones? Because there are a lot of them out there now.
I think that Banyan's telehealth program is unique because we're able to interface quite easily with all of the resources that Banyan, which has a national presence, we're able to interface with all of those resources and provide support not only to the patient, but to their families as well. And I think that most people are at a point when they talk about mental health treatment or substance use disorder treatment that ignoring the family system or the living system of the patient is just not working anymore, right? So we're able to interface with Banyan's Faith in Recovery, with their alumni, even with all the teams of medical doctors, therapists. We're able to provide specialized care to the patients in addition to a bunch of free supplemental resources that the patients can access.
I know our family program has done very well because it's true. It's a family disease. It's not just the individual. So we really try to treat as many people as we can in that family unit to ensure that the actual patient that we're treating gets the best outcome of success.
Yeah, one of the tenets of wellness is accountability. And treating a patient, you know, as an isolated system and ignoring their parents or their husband or their wife or their children has already in the research proven to be ineffective. So our telehealth program is unique because we want to involve the system. We want to treat the system as much as we possibly can. So we don't just have one individual that's doing all the heavy lifting. The whole system can get healthier.
Yeah, that's so great.
I think so.
So what advice would you give to someone that's considering a telehealth program?
The only advice that I can really give to somebody is if they're considering a telehealth program is just to go for it. I can't think of one con of doing a telehealth program. You can do it from your bedroom, from your home. Some of our patients even see their therapist on their lunch break. And they're able to access these services anywhere that they are in the world. And I just personally believe that there's really no harm that can be done from talking to a therapist and, you know, working on yourself, working on the system. And I think that, you know, if you're thinking about it, just go for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kahlia, for coming out here and speaking about the telehealth program for us today.
Thank you for having me, Alyssa. It was a great opportunity for me to spread awareness about Banyan's telehealth program and just how important it is for people to access these services. They're available, they're out there. So I really appreciate the platform to be able to discuss these things.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember that growth and recovery are possible and it can all start today. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Banyan Treatment Centers. Make sure you're subscribing for notifications of new episodes, and don't forget to leave us a review. If you or someone you know is struggling, please call us at 888-515-7706. Thanks for joining us today on the Banyan Podcast.